even though successive Albertan and increasingly Saskatchewan governments are telling the government of Canada that we're not happy with the way things are set up now. If they don't want to talk, then there is the Clarity Act. There is help that I'm sure that we would get from our friends south of the border.
As many of you all know, the G7 is currently taking place right here in Alberta. And as much as Mark Carney tried his best to avoid calling it the 51st Summit, it is indeed the 51st Summit, being held in a province that many, on both sides of the border, would like to see become the 51st state. The G7 meeting is happening against the backdrop of a growing movement for Alberta to become independent from Canada, with a premier in Danielle Smith, who, even though she hasn't come out and straight up stated that she supports independence, quite the opposite as a matter of fact, her actions indicate, at least so far, that she will not get in the way of Albertans determining for themselves whether they want to continue in the socialist nightmare that is today's Canada or forge their own path in an independent Alberta. What exactly comes out of the G7 is anybody's guess, but we will find out shortly. Here's footage from a recent independence event which was held in Red Deer, Alberta. The support for independence keeps growing as events like this continue to show.
This, I think, is a perfect illustration of what's going on in Canada right now. We are heading off the cliff at 100 miles an hour, and none of our political leaders have enough common sense to say we have to change direction. And to me, that is what Alberta independence is all about. It's changing direction so we have a positive future instead of flying off the cliff. What's that cliff? I'll tell you, this is not some conspiracy theory. This is not something you listen to some extreme guy on YouTube. A few months ago, this report was leaked out of the Prime Minister's office. It's all about social mobility. What social mobility is, it's for you, if you work hard, can you improve your life and go from lower class to middle class or from middle class to upper class? So the PMO's office did a report on this. And what they said is by 2040, there is no hope for anyone to improve their lives and to change their social standing. Some of the interesting things in this report is, number one, people are going to start to fish and hunt, not for fun, but because they won't be able to afford food. So literally, the government is saying in 15 years, people might be hunting squirrels in the park to feed themselves. In 2040, owning a home is not going to be a realistic opportunity for not some, not for a few, but for many. The only way, according to the Prime Minister's office, the only way people can improve their lot in life is when your parents die and you get their inheritance. A very, very bleak way of looking at the future. A year ago, there was a secret RCMP report leaked. And what it said is that people may revolt within the next 5 years when they realize how bad Canada is and how they have no hope for improving things.
As much as it sounds like it's all made up or some sort of horror movie, this is all true. I even made a video commenting on this specific report. A few months back, a branch of the Government of Canada leaked an official document where they explained, in no uncertain terms, how bleak of a future is waiting for Canada if things don't change drastically. The report paints an awful picture of a future not too far away, in a Canada where by 2040, upward social mobility will be nearly impossible, which means that it doesn't matter how hard you work, you just won't be able to get ahead, unless you inherit wealth from your family. The report talks about Canadians having to hunt and forage for food, as they can no longer afford to feed themselves or their families. Sounds insane, I know, but it starts to make sense when you pay attention to the kind of shape Canada is in today. People who have completely given up on ever owning a home, despite working 2 jobs, because the housing market is that unaffordable. Working families having to rely on food banks more than ever before in order to sustain themselves and their children. Youth unemployment in Canada is higher than it's ever been. Our youth can't even find jobs in their own country, while our government continues to import cheap labor from the third world. And then there's the report from the RCMP, where they admit Canadians will likely revolt once they realize just how bad things are here.
Canada's blood has gone septic, and there is a lone exception, Alberta. And the message that I want to send to Alberta before I get into this is, Alberta, it's not the Canada that you think you know and love. The Canada, it's not there anymore, Albertans. And this is a genuine plea and a case that I want to make to people of Alberta, maybe some folks in Saskatchewan. Let's get past the trolling and the idea of being the 51st state. There's a way to make this work where you no longer have to be shackled to the communists of your country. This is an inflection point. It's a fork in the road. You have a choice to make. Canada's had a serious string of massive problems. They've had a housing crisis. They've had an immigration disaster. They've had stagnant economic growth. The other Canadian folks voted for more of the exact same thing. Albertans, take a sober look at yourself right now. You need to leave Canada. Canada is not what you thought it was. Canada is a Marxist hellhole. And by the way, Alberta, the rest of Canada despises you. If you choose to stay with Canada, you will wither on the vine and die.
He's not wrong when he says that the rest of Canada doesn't really like Alberta. One doesn't have to go far to see the difference in reaction to Alberta's desire for independence compared to that of Quebec. When the people of Quebec wanted to go it alone and become their own country, the general sentiment in Canada was to try to convince them to stay, in a diplomatic and sympathetic way. The rest of Canada tried to understand where they were coming from and ended up accommodating many of their requests. For Alberta, however, the reaction is completely opposite. Except for folks in Saskatchewan, the general public in most provinces angrily criticize and attack Albertans. Words like traitor get thrown around immediately. And the irony of it all is that Albertans, unlike Quebec, are actual net contributors to the country's wealth. As a matter of fact, Alberta is the largest contributor to equalization, which sees provinces in the east like New Brunswick have nearly half of their annual budget be covered by wealth transfers from Alberta. You'd think they'd at least send a thank you card. Alright, thanks for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Special thanks to those of you who have donated to this project. It is much appreciated, and it helps me continue making videos. See you on the next one. Peace.